Even in this most challenging of years, Conservative parliamentarians have remained committed to keeping Israel on the agenda and ensuring that the UK-Israel relationship goes from strength to strength.
One of our key priorities have been to keep in touch with the new intake of Conservative MPs elected last year and to ensure that they get an opportunity to see Israel. We already have quite a long waiting list of the new intake to visit Israel when it's possible to do so.
Back in February, before lockdown, I had the pleasure of leading a group of MPs to Israel. Travelling to Israel's northern borders with Syria and Lebanon, being briefed by the Israeli Defence Forces, is an experience like no other.
Despite being unable to travel for much of the year, many of our new colleagues have joined CFI for a series of online briefings with Israelis, ranging from Knesset members to security experts and scientists.
Throughout the year, Conservatives have raised in Parliament the Iranian nuclear deal, and we've called for the proscription of the terrorist organisation, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. In October, over 80 parliamentarians signed a CFI coordinated letter to the Prime Minister asking that Britain's attitude towards Iran became more realistic and more robust.
Iran has openly and consistently expressed its willingness to commit another atrocity against the Jewish people, and is actually pursuing the capacity to carry out this threat itself and with its proxies, including Hezbollah and Hamas.
And we have raised concerns about the Palestinian Authority school curriculum, which contains material inciting violence and hatred against Israel and Jews. As a former teacher himself, newly elected MP Jonathan Gullis led a powerful parliamentary debate on the subject back in March.
Over many decades, Palestinian children have grown up in an environment of institutionalised radicalisation. In schools named after suicide bombers, school children from the age of 6 are taught Israel is a temporary construct that will disappear as the fog over the sea.
We've led from the front, calling for a world-leading post-Brexit trade agreement between the United Kingdom and Israel.
With all of our minds on both the health and economic recovery from the COVID pandemic, can I ask my right honourable friend what discussions he's had with her Israeli counterpart to further trade cooperation beyond the continuity deal, not least given the Israeli incredible groundbreaking innovations to combat COVID-19, such as through remote monitoring of patients and thermal scanning?
Well, my honourable friend is right. It's vital that we use trade as a way of motoring growth post this terrible COVID crisis, and we are working on negotiating a cat's cradle of trade deals around the world to support British business. So, of course, Israel is one of those priorities. It's very advanced in areas like data and digital. There's strong scope for a really world-leading agreement, and we are in discussions about it.
These are indeed exciting times. History was made this year with the Abraham Accords, the bright light in an otherwise dark year, the peace agreements between Israel, the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan and Morocco.
The Middle East is changing before our eyes, and the significance of Israel's peace agreements with the UAE and Bahrain cannot be overstated. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that this new development between Israel and her Arab neighbours changes the narrative, creates a new dynamic in the region and gives rise to new hope for a peace deal?
I thank my honourable friend. The normalisation of relations represents a move towards peace in the region, and the UK strongly welcomes it. And we encourage other states to choose the same path. But ultimately there is no substitute for direct talks between the Palestinians and Israel, which is the only way to reach a two-state solution and a lasting peace.
As our close ally Israel further develops ties with the Arab world, let us ensure that the Palestinian people are not left behind by telling the Palestinian leadership the hard truths needed to achieve a lasting peace and providing the support needed to reinvigorate the peace process.
Of course, the United Kingdom has an important role to play in fostering these new relationships, and by ensuring that members of Parliament are properly briefed and when permissible to return to Israel with fresh delegations, we will ensure that the voice of Israel is heard in the Conservative Party at every possible level.
Thanks to your continued support, we will seize this incredible opportunity to promote regional peace and prosperity and make our voices heard.
And permit me to thank my friends, my colleagues, Stephen and Eric, who have guided and led CFI with such distinction, devotion and judgment. We are deeply grateful to you both.